So, let's talk about something you probably wouldn't expect. A story about a massive cultural revolution, right inside the US federal government. It's about how a few forward thinkers took on the stereotype of a slow, clunky bureaucracy and built this incredible engine for growing leaders from the inside out. Let's dive in.
Here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the spark that got the whole thing going. Then, we'll look at the people who made it happen, how they got the bigwigs on board and proved it was worth it, and how they turned it into a lasting culture. And finally, we'll boil it all down to a simple blueprint that you can use for pretty much any big idea.
Okay, part one, where it all began. You know, every big change starts with a problem, and this one started by facing a really common perception head-on before coming up with a truly visionary idea. You know, this quote from G.L. Salmon, one of the pioneers of this whole thing, it really gets to the heart of what they were trying to do. Think about it. In a government world that's all about rules and process, they wanted to create, well, space. Space for people to actually listen, to connect, and for real change to happen.
Let's just be honest for a second. When you think of a government agency, what words pop into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably stuff like bureaucracy, red tape, slow, right? Well, that is exactly the stereotype these folks were up against. They saw a system that was just crying out for a new way to help its people grow. So their idea was actually brilliantly simple. Instead of spending a ton of money on fancy external coaches for just a few top executives, they asked a revolutionary question. What if we built our own army of trained coaches inside the government? This would create a resource that was way more cost-effective, understood the culture, and, this is the key, was available to everyone, not just the people at the top. And that, right there, was the spark.
But, you know, an idea is just an idea until you have the right people to bring it to life. And that leads us to one of the first huge strategic questions they had to answer. Who exactly should be doing the coaching?
Okay, first, let's just get on the same page about what a coach even is. According to the International Coaching Federation, it's not about telling people what to do. It's a partnership, a creative process. The coach isn't there to give you the answers. They're there to help you find your own answers. And that difference is absolutely crucial.
So this really lays out the big trade-off they had to think about. On the one hand, you've got internal coaches. They get the culture, they know the mission, and they're way cheaper. But on the other hand, you've got external coaches who bring in fresh ideas and a totally unbiased perspective. Plus, they offer more confidentiality, which can be a huge deal. What the really smart programs figured out was that you needed a mix of both.
Having the right people is one thing, but if you want your program to actually last, you need two other things: powerful friends in high places and cold, hard data. This next part is all about how they got that executive buy-in and proved their worth, which, it turns out, are two of the biggest predictors of success. You can really see how this thing grew over time. It started small with a little consortium back in 2009. A few years later, the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, gets involved and creates the Federal Coaching Network. Then they create a standardized training program. But the real game changer was in 2018, when OPM sent a memo to all agency leaders basically saying, hey, this coaching thing, it's legit. You should be doing it. Now that is how you get strategic sponsorship.
But see, getting that support is only half the battle. To keep the lights on, to keep the funding coming, they had to constantly answer the one question every leader asks. What are we getting back for our money? It wasn't enough to feel good. They had to prove it worked with data.
And they did this with a really smart 5-level system. It starts simple. At level 1, did people like it? But it gets way more serious. Level 3 asks, are people actually using the new skills? But the real power is in levels 4 and 5, where you connect coaching directly to business results and, yep, the bottom line. This is where you can say, we coached our project managers and it led to a 10% drop in project delays, which saved the agency $2 million. See, that's how you turn a nice-to-have into a must-have. So proving your value helps your program survive. But the ultimate goal here, the real endgame, wasn't just to run another program. It was to fundamentally change the culture, to make coaching part of the government's DNA.
And here's the proof in the pudding. This data shows a direct, undeniable link between how strong an agency's coaching culture is and how happy its employees are. In the places where coaching was a core part of how they did business, job satisfaction was way higher. It's a pretty powerful case for why this stuff matters.
So the big question is, how'd they pull that off? How do you scale an idea from just a few people into a government-wide mindset? Well, they did it by building infrastructure, a system designed to help the culture grow and support itself.
And this system, the Federal Coaching Network, stood on 4 key pillars.
First, a database so agencies could share coaches. Smart. Second, they kept collecting that all-important ROI data. Third, they made a how-to guide so new programs weren't starting from zero. And fourth, they created a standardized training program to make sure every coach was high quality. This is the nuts and bolts, the infrastructure that made the change stick.
Okay, so we've seen the problem, we've met the people, we've looked at the strategy and the culture shift. Now let's tie it all together into a clear, simple blueprint that you can actually use.
So here it is, the 5-step plan. Number 1, it has to start with a real vision for a better way. 2, you've got to find the right people for the job. 3, and this is non-negotiable, you have to get high-level sponsors to champion your cause. 4, prove it's working with data to keep it alive. And finally, number 5, build the systems, the infrastructure that makes the change a permanent part of the culture. That's the blueprint.
When you think about it, the story of coaching in the federal government is proof that even the biggest, most entrenched organizations can change. This blueprint isn't really just about coaching. It's about how to make any big, bold idea a reality. It really makes you wonder, if this approach can work in the federal government, what other massive challenges could a blueprint like this help us solve?